Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is going to be a video on React Router, on how to set up Router and get it all up and going, and all the different, all the main features of Router. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin up a quick project. So I'm going to do npx create React basic, and we'll just call this prac router because we're practicing Router. Okay, so that creates a project. I'm going to cd into that folder, prac router, and then I'm going to do an npm install to install all my dependencies. So I'm going to let that do its thing. So it's doing the thing. Okay, so that's done. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to install Router. So I'm going to npm install React Router and React Router DOM. Okay, so I'm going to install those two libraries. They're installing. Okay, now I'm going to open up, run the project, npm run dev, because again, this is not a create React app build. This is my own template. So the command to run the dev server is npm run dev. This is built with Webpack. If you use this, all the configurations are webpack.config. Feel free to play around with them. npm run dev. Okay, that runs the dev server. And there we go. So now that I have React Router installed, how do we set it up? First thing you want to do is head over to your index.js or index.jsx, and then you want to make sure you install browser router. Okay. Am I looking at the right one? No, I'm not. Okay, prac router. Here we go. Okay. Source index.jsx, and what I want to do is I want to import browser router. Browser router is technically the router component, but we don't want to call it that because that's kind of a weird name. So we want to rename it. So we use the as keyword as router. Okay, because it's a named export, so that's why we have to use the curly brackets to destructure it from the library, which means we can't just give it a different name. We have to first call it by its name and then say, hey, use this thing as that. So browser router as router from React Router DOM. And then we're going to wrap the app component inside of Router. That's what allows Router to communicate with our entire application. This is technically under the hood a context provider that's providing information about what's the text in the URL bar and the history of routes we've taken and all this kind of stuff. It makes all this stuff available to all our routes. Okay, so there you've set up Router. Now let's go back to our app.js, and I'm going to import our other components, which are route. That's going to determine our individual routes, link, and I'm going to do switch. Okay, from React Router DOM. Okay. So let's redo this. I'll make this a fragment. Okay. So what we're going to do is first, I'm going to make a few routes. Okay. So you just do route, and then you have to put a prop called path. That means where does the prop go to? So prop slash and this route, and whatever is in between the two route elements, the route opening tag and closing tag, that's what will show when that route is activated. So if it sees slash in the URL, it'll activate this. So we'll just make it an H1 that says home. And let's do a few more of these. Okay. Cool. And actually what I'll do is let me just define another component real quick. So I'm just going to do const const home. Just make these three components real quick. Const home equals props h1 home. Okay, so see, that's like the smallest you can define a component. That's pretty nice and succinct. Let's just do home, other, and another. other, other, and another. Another. Okay. And then, so that way instead of these H1s, I will just do the home component. Okay. Other. And another. Okay. And then this will be other and another. Okay. So those routes now exist. So now if I right now if I go to the page, I see home, because when you have no endpoint, nothing at the end of the URL, that's the same as the slash by itself. But how do I change the URL? Well, we need to create buttons. So that's where the link tag comes into play. So the link allows you to turn something into a link. The reason you don't use A tags is because A tags will refresh the page and try to make a server request, which we don't want to do. So you should just say link to equals slash other. So actually just do slash. And we'll have a button that's called home. Okay. And then we'll just make 3 links. And this one's going to be other. Another. Okay. So now if I go back to the page, see there's 3 buttons. If I click on other, now see here, I see home and other. Well, I don't want to see two components. I just really want to see one of them at a time. So the problem is when I have them just as routes, it'll render any one that matches. And the reason, even though home is supposed to match just the slash, technically there is a slash inside of other, so that still doesn't quite work. So the first thing I can do to try to fix this is I add a switch component. A switch just means only one route shows up at a time. So any route in the switch, only the first one that triggers is the first one that works. So I'm going to add a switch. Okay, and I'm going to cut the closing tag, put that below this route. Okay, so now, well, let me go back. Okay, so see, I'm on home. If I click on other, now the problem is I change the URLs and nothing changes. The reason being is when it goes to the switch, slash other and slash another still match slash. So it's hitting this route first. So in that case, it doesn't change. So to fix that, I will put exact path. Okay, exact path. So that means this one has to match exactly the slash. So now if I switch between them, so I go home, other, another, see it switches between them. But if I take a look, now let's say I want to pass, there's some pretty cool stuff that router can pass into these components. But if I hit Control-Shift-I, and I go take a look at home, so I go to components here, my React DevTools, and I go to another, that's what's showing right now. See, there's no props. So the router is not giving it the props that I'd like to have. I could pass in my own props. I could be like, another cheese equals Gouda. Okay. And when I go back to, I think it was other. Nope. If I go to there, see, I see Gouda. I see that prop. Now other has the... That's interesting. Okay, other got the props. I don't know why. Home's got the props. Other's got the props. But another... oh no, because I'm not looking at that property. It's down here. Another. See, another just has Gouda. And if I go to other, and I click on other, other has no props. Home has no props. What I would really like to do is get all these router props. So see, like this stuff, history, location, match. I want to get that stuff from props, from router, because I can use that stuff. I can do like URL params, all sorts of fun stuff. So if I want to get the router props, one way I can do it is I change the way I do the route. So instead of doing this whole opening and closing tag, what I do is I'll do component equals home. Okay, and now if I go to home and I look at home, see if I'm highlighting home, see now it has history, location, and match. So I can use those now. The problem is I can't pass in my prop anymore. There's nowhere for me to put the prop to home. So if I want to be able to give a custom props and get the router props, I have to do this. So I'll do this with other. What you have to do is you have to create a render prop on route, and then in the render prop you pass in a function. And you'll pass, and then that function is going to receive the render props, which are those location, match, etc. This function should render whatever component you want to render. So I want to render the other component. Okay, cool. Now what I can do is I can say I can put in my props here. Okay, and something. Oh, I need to put a slash over here. Okay. So now in other, I can now start passing in other props. So I want to pass, I first want to include the render props. So what I'll do is I'll do render props, and then I need to do a spread operator. What that does, it takes the object, which has location, match, and history, and spreads it. So it looks like, so it's almost as if I put history, match, and location as their own individual props. Okay. And then I can put in my another prop. So I can say like cheese equals Gouda. And see, so I'm including the render props and the custom props. So if I go now, if I click on other, and I go down to my React DevTools, click on the other component, see I have cheese, and I have my render props, history, location, match. Okay. Cool. One last thing you can do. Okay, so let's say I wanted to do something like this. I can do a route, and then the path equals slash cheese slash colon cheese. The colon cheese is a variable. Okay, it's a param, and it'll take whatever value I pass into that part of the URL. Okay, and what I want to do, okay, so let me create another component. Control C. This will be called cheese. This component is going to receive the render props because I'm going to pass it in as a render component, kind of like I did in the last one. So what I want to do is I want to access props. So in props are my render props, which particularly it's going to have match, which is going to have a section called params, and we added a param called cheese. Okay. So then that's going to be dot cheese. Okay. So that's what this component is going to render. So it's going to just say whatever the cheese is that is in the URL. So let's create a couple different links. So I'll do 1 slash Gouda. But this should be cheese slash Gouda. This one will be to cheese slash Munster. Okay. Let's write these as Gouda Munster. Okay. And now I just do render, and actually I don't even need to do the render props because I'm passing in that information via the URL route. So I can just do component equals cheese because I'm not passing in any custom props. And that'll receive the router props. Okay. Let me go back to the main page. So router is not defined. Oops, did I write router? Yep, I wrote router. I meant to write route. Here we go. Cheese is not defined. Oh, I must have wrote cheese. Oh, it's cheese with a capital because it's a component. There we go. So now if I click on Gouda, see it says Gouda. And if I click on Munster, it says Munster. So even though it's the same component, it says whatever it says because I'm grabbing the URL params. Remember, because it was cheese, :cheese. So we're here where the :cheese was, that becomes the variable. So if I type in Gouda, I go to my components and go into my cheese. I go to match, again, with one of the router props. Inside match, there is params. And inside params, you see cheese Gouda. Okay? See, because the path was cheese, but the URL that we went to was cheese Gouda, so it knows to take this part of the URL and put it in this variable. Okay, so you can use that to generate like lots of sort of very dynamic pages, dynamic API requests, a lot of really cool stuff. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of the cool stuff you can do with Router and how to access those things. My name is Alex Merced. The only other thing I want to mention is that if you need to change the URL not via a link button, like let's say you want to, like you click a button, it does a bunch of stuff, and then it's supposed to send them back to the main page, in the history prop, there is a function called push right here. This will change the URL bar. So if you need to change the path, just use this function push. Okay, if not, just Google history.push. You'll see exactly really quickly how that works. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Join the Slack and Discord community over there at devnursery.com. Have a great day and enjoy.